Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Dallas Literary Festival. We've had a wonderful time since Friday evening with Mitchell Jackson and Alice Marie Johnson, continued on through Saturday, and now up to today. And we're having our first glitch. Uh, I'm just going to say that Mr. Charles Blow is late for the event, but because we're on a tight timeline, we're going to go ahead and start with Pastor Richie Butler and Dr. Maria Dixon-Hall. And we'll discuss Charles Blow's book until he signs in for the festival. And if not, we'll just have a wonderful conversation. At the end, we'll have a 15-minute Q&A. So please post your questions in the chat. And thank you and welcome to the Dallas Literary Festival presented by SMU.
Welcome, everybody. And we are so glad to have you with us. As Professor Smith has outlined, I don't consider this a glitch. This has been one of the best things to happen at SMU at a very long time. And so we're so grateful that you joined us today. Like you, I am anxious to hear from Mr. Blow, but things happen as we've learned in 2020. And so we will just wait and we will have a great conversation. One of the things and let me introduce myself to you. I'm Dr. Maria Dixon-Hall. I'm the Chief Diversity Officer for Southern Methodist University, the very first one we've ever had. I've been in the job about 6 months, but I've been a professor here for 16 years. I am a graduate. My undergraduate is from the University of Alabama. And I went to Emory University, and I'm an ordained minister in the United Methodist Church. And I got my PhD from the University of Missouri. So I've lived the vast majority of my life in the Southeast, born and raised. And I am privileged to be here with my colleague, both in ministry as well as in SMU, all things SMU, Reverend Richie Butler, who has been just a force for good. He is truly a Renaissance man. He is, most people don't know this about him now, but he was a standout football player here at SMU, and then went on to get his degrees both in theology as well as business, and serves as in the Prescott Group as managing strategic partner. That's where he was for a very long time. And now he has turned his attention to making Dallas a better place through his work with Project Unity. I would say that if our friend or my good friend Richie Butler has a motto, it is "Together we can." We can immunize, we can vaccinate, we can test, and we can reconcile. And so it is just a joy to be able to have a conversation this Sunday afternoon. Well, we were having a great conversation before, but we are having a great time together, and we're going to invite you into that to talk about this fantastic work that Mr. Blow has written. But it's really a manifesto, and it's what I call a call home. The book is really, to me, the second part of the work he started in Fire Shut Up in My Bones, which was a New York Times notable book, in which he shared his memoirs of growing up in Louisiana as a young boy, and both the joys and the pains that come with that as a young African American in the South at that time. It was a childhood that was forged with maternal wisdom and care, but it was sustained by catfish and fried green tomatoes. But it was also an opportunity to be enmeshed in the larger American story. And as I tell my colleagues all the time, that the African American experience is different based on your geography in America. There's some things we share, but there are some unique contexts about being an African American Southerner. And I think that Mr. Blow truly did that in his first book. This new book, which is just absolutely fascinating, um, is an opportunity, as I would say, to tell to bring us back from the Great Migration and ask us to think about what it would mean for all of those African Americans who left the South, went to the North in search of uh, brighter lands, both in the auto industry, the steel industry, those people who left to go to Gary, Indiana, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, all of those places. He is now asking us, what would it be for us to return home and deal with the devil we know, and call us back to the South from our own self exile and begin to work in power to disrupt white supremacy, as well as to claim our right uh, as African Americans to participate in the American democratic experience. So, with that, I'm going to start with my colleague Richie and let him give his views. And then we're just going to have a conversation and invite you in.
Maria, thank you, and to Dr. Sandria Smith. Great job on this literary festival. We're so proud of you, and that's coming from a trustee of the university. So we celebrate this weekend. You know, I think you summed up his book, "The Devil You Know," Black Power Manifesto. You know, I would also just make the point, what I thought was quite telling was that he goes into great detail about the Great Migration, where millions of African Americans migrated from the South to the North, of what he refers to as destination cities.
Mm-hmm.
State of Michigan, Detroit, and New York City, and other places, and how they've attempted to forge a future there, and realize, and I think realize that racism is as prevalent. Whites might not have wanted you to be slaves, but they don't want you to be equal to them.
Mm-hmm.
And also he goes into a deep dive when it relates to policing, not just in the South, but he actually provides a great level of statistics that makes the case that if you were to sort of unearth the disparities when it comes to officer involved shootings, and the percentages, if you think about it, the vast majority, a good majority of those are in those destination cities, those cities that are not classified as the South, and also, uh, I think makes the point at the end of the day that what we thought was sort of the promised land going up north,
Mm-hmm.
really wasn't it. And also, so he calls forth what he classifies as this push, um, that around injustice, around economic disparity, and the pull to bring us home, and the power of density. I mean, and I think that is evident in the
Mm-hmm.
state of Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
because African Americans represent, I think, more than a third of the state's population now. And it's over the last 10 to 15 years where there's been a constant flowing and migration of African Americans into the state of Georgia, and in particular 4 counties that really define the state. And it's those counties that gave us help to get Biden over as a winner in the state of Georgia, and then also 2 U.S. senators.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he just makes the case that if and also he says, this is so true, when you think about our political influence and how the politics and policies ultimately can impact economic empowerment. uh, you know, we may need to think about concentration so that we can leverage, that density and literally, because there are 9 million Black people within some key southern states, but they don't represent a majority such that can get, I think you have maybe three legislative representatives, in the Congress. But he makes the point that those 9 million Black folk probably are double the size of the state of Montana, South and North Dakota, but they each have, 2 senators and several representatives. And we have to recognize if we really want, because, things aren't going to change in the way we want them to change until we have that kind of power and influence. And so it does call for us to make a move, quote unquote, back home. I did have a question for the brother, because he excluded Texas as one of those places where we need to move to. He focused on Georgia and Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, South Carolina, North Carolina, some of those key states.
Well, here's what's interesting, Richie. I just was sharing with SMU leadership the fact that the highest concentration of African Americans in what would be considered the Confederate South is Texas right now. Texas has the largest concentration of African Americans in the state. And I think that's an important point. And as people left, remember, they were running from Jim Crow, they were running from lynching. There was this fundamental belief that if we went north, all would be well.
Yeah.
And, as a young Black girl who grew up in Alabama, I can tell you that's not the case.
Yeah.
That there is something unique about the relationship of African Americans and the South that offers a promise. And speaking of promise, I am so excited.
We made it.
So sorry. I changed time zones. I'm coming to Minneapolis to write about George Floyd tomorrow. And I'm like, and I looked at my phone, and my publicist is like, "Where are you?" And I thought, oh my God.
No
we are so happy to have you. We've just been riffing till you got here because we've been doing something.
My lighting is horrible because it's coming from this way, but I was like, I can't even worry about all that. I have to just get on.
But Charles, I was like, I know he wasn't going to disappoint me.
Of course.
Or something.
Do you guys know how I met her?
No.
Please tell. I can tell you how I met her. I want to know how you met her.
Okay, so I had gone to the Martha's Vineyard Book Festival, and it was my first book, and there were 3 or 4 of us, Ta-Nehisi and me, and Ta-Nehisi was in the same house that I was staying in, and it was like a writer's colony. And I was itchy, I couldn't sleep, so I went downstairs, and in this living room were all these writers talking about their work, and I was like, oh my God, look at all these young writers talking about their work, and Centuria was there, and it was a wonderful time, and we were cutting up, making so much noise, and then Ta-Nehisi comes down, and I was like, does anybody have like, what is it, like contact lens fluid or something, and somebody says, was it you? He said, well, we don't have it, but you can just lick it. And he was like, it was the most horrible thing and suggestion he ever had in his life. It was hilarious. Anyway, that's how I met Cynthia.
Well, that certainly is a story that I will keep and I will pull out when necessary.
And that's being from the South, Maria.
Exactly.
I was about to say, but that's how we roll.
Yeah,
that is how we cut up clown, but also there is an affinity of coming together. And Charles, one of the things I did say was that the only problem you and I have is you were on the wrong side of the Bayou Classic, and
there are 2 sides.
Huh?
There are two sides.
See, don't go there. Or as we like to say, our band is better. But I think what excites me about the conversation, and I'm gonna back out a little bit as you and Richie take over, but as you know, because he's Texan, and I'm still struggling about Texans being considered Southern, because yeah, I'm not.
We can talk about that. Yeah, I'm from Texas, so I'm
okay.
But he and I have this fight all the time because I'm like, number one, they don't have enough Waffle Houses. You're right. Number two, they don't have sweet tea.
Who doesn't have sweet tea?
That's a misnomer. We now have sweet
Texas
tea.
Doesn't have sweet tea.
They just got sweet tea.
Texas very much has sweet tea.
Now we do.
Now they do. They didn't before.
There was a day.
There was a day. But see, Texas is huge. So
if you go to East
Texas is south.
Yes.
Right. They have as many Confederate statues as anybody.
Right. We could
West
cut them
Texas
in. Right.
Is where you start having an issue.
Yeah, you could cut them in, and you could take all the people in the because they got pine trees. That's the other.
I've never thought about that.
You have to have the pine trees is what helps. Now the final.
So wait, where's the most northern state that you consider still a southern state? Now that'll tell me who.
That'll tell you a lot.
Yes.
Now I could go old Confederate and say Virginia. Because old Confederate is Virginia, but I don't consider Virginia South. I come back to North Carolina.
Really?
I go west to Tennessee.
Okay.
Arkansas.
Okay.
And Kentucky is still to me a border state. It is the ratio. It is the ratio of Waffle Houses.
Now so the Census Bureau doesn't mean you don't care what they say.
No, they can do whatever they want. And the history books can say what they want to say too. I think there is such a distinctive. When I moved here from Atlanta,
okay,
I was traumatized, in the sense of just the very thing you talked about, density, of being able to find oneself.
Yes.
So when I came to Dallas, I was expecting sort of what I would find in Atlanta. I'd just plop down and see people who look like me. Well, I plopped down in Highland Park and was shocked. And had to look. I had to drive 20 minutes to get my hair cut. I had to find my church, to find an African American church was a 25 minutes. Whereas in Atlanta.
Okay, wait a minute. And what about this? Delaware is the 8th blackest state in America, and the census considered it to be Southern.
You know how you see that meme that does the blinks? That's all I can do. I would do a J. Alexander and clutch my pearls. Delaware. I can't even believe
That's what the census says.
But the administration. So, here's what I would say, Charles.
Yes.
This idea of what is Southern. What does it mean to be Southern? There is an ontological question there.
Yes.
Because there are on my campus, there are 3
and
Dixons.
Geographically Southern and culturally Southern are different things.
Yes. 3 Dixons. We have Daryl Dixon, who is from LA. We have Jessica Dixon, who is from Atlanta, and me, I'm from Alabama. And we laugh all the time because Daryl doesn't get us. He doesn't get the need. We don't have stuffing. We have dressing.
I wish my mother would have put something inside of a turkey cookie.
Hello, do you hear what I'm saying? But there's also there's an integration. Oh, now Daryl's trying to chime in about he's a car. Okay, well, you kicked out the Cousins Club, Daryl. Sorry, I just had to have a side moment. But what's interesting to me is that there is also, excuse me, y'all, I'm having issues. There's also a cultural issue of being Southern.
Yes.
Of what does it mean? How does the Black church function in the Southern culture? How do we understand politics in the Southern culture? How do we understand education? The HBCU, even the way the HBCUs function, particularly here, even in Texas, is different than it does, at TSU, at, Morehouse, Spelman.
Wait a minute. People from
Pitt.
Prairie View are going to be very upset now.
I understand, and Prairie View is important, but you know what? There's not that it has the whole state, and that's what's been interesting to me. Even as in my sorority, I've had to try to figure out how do these things work. So I feel sometimes like a child who's in exile from the South.
Wow, that's very interesting.
So it's been traumatic. Plus, they think that beef is barbecue, Charles. That's a problem. Barbecue is pork, and you know that.
Richie, you see how she's talking about the Texas? I don't know if you're going to be able to deal with her talking about Texas.
Let's transition off of that and talk about your book.
Thank you.
I'll just slink on away and let y'all talk about the book.
I want to remain friends with Maria Dixon-Hall. Texas, she might lose somebody. So one, thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you today, and
absolutely
to read the book. First, why did you write it?
It's a harder question to answer than you might think, because people asked this Genesis question before, and I'm kind of stumbled around. I'm not exactly sure what the actual Genesis was. When I thought about it, I think it had come into my consciousness, this idea of what had happened in Delaware, where young white people had moved with political intentionality after a writer had suggested that they should take over a state for political reasons to further their aims. And all these young white hippies had done this. Not a majority of them, but tens of thousands of them had actually done it. And they had transformed Vermont from one of the most conservative states in America to one of the most liberal states in America. It gives Barack Obama his highest percentage of the white vote in 2008. It produces people like Bernie Sanders. And I thought to myself, I was so exhausted by the ritual playing out of not only current ritual of police shooting, marching, protesting, lack of accountability, the system performing the way it's designed to perform, and therefore denying what people wanted to call justice to those Black people, but also the historical ritual of every time Black people make any sort of advance, particularly around politics and power, that the white backlash is so enormous that it drowns out that possibility of power. And it seemed to me in this Vermont example of young white people, there existed a mechanism for revolution that was legal, that was basically using the American Constitution against itself, and having a pathway to Black power that would be permanent and real.
Tell me, who, because in most literary spaces, and this is a literary festival, the author or the publisher knows who the audience is. Who is this intended for?
Now, so there's the answer I should be giving, which sells a lot more books, which is everybody, But I am literally writing to young Black people.
Okay.
Right, so I am writing to the people who would move, and trying to say to them, to the young people, young people are always the bulk of any voluntary migration. They're less inhibited. They own less. They have not made their familial connections in terms of picking a spouse or whatever, having children. But also, when I say that, I also remind myself that Shakespeare wasn't writing to me,
Yeah.
but I can still read that work and enjoy it and learn from it, or whomever else. I wasn't always the target audience, but I can still find the work interesting and learn from it. So I say both things. But when I'm talking, when the voice in the book,
Yeah.
when I picture who is reading that book, it is a young Black person.
Have you gotten any, I mean, a Black Power Manifesto, the fact that you put Black Power Manifesto, have you gotten any backlash, or what's been the commentary from some of your white friends or white liberals or
Well, well, first of all, I'm doing a book tour in the middle of a pandemic, which, so all of us writers who've done this is like, what am I doing? You don't get to see and touch and feel the audience.
Yeah.
But I do remember when I was writing, before I published, people always say, oh, so what are you working on? And so you just, because you work on books for years, you end up saying the same thing a zillion times, but you can't show them the product. So they're getting the shorthand and they hear the word Black Power Manifesto. And some people are like freaking out, like, what are you talking about? Like this, they hear Black Power and their corollary is white power.
Yeah.
And those are not the same things in this context, right? White power was really about anti-Blackness as much as anything else. And when I say Black power, I mean Black access to equal exertion of power, right? Not that it is that I want Black people to be in a superior position, but on a level playing position, which has never really been a truth for Black people in this country.
No, you're right. I'm curious in the book, and I will proudly say, man, with everything I do, I don't get a chance to read like I like to, but I had a chance.
None of us do.
But this conversation forced me to read your book, and I loved it. You said something that I found interesting around this debate or discussion around whether or not America is redeemable, or the sin of racism is just a cancer and it's terminal. And I just want to get your take on where I know you articulated something in the book, but is that where you still stand, or where's your thinking in that regard?
So what I say in the book is what is still true, which is that I have a foot in both camps, that I believe that America is malleable to a certain degree, but that racism itself seems to me to be a fixture that may not be able to be eradicated. And so if you operate on the assumption that this is not something that is going away permanently in the sense that what we would like it to be, and also believe that the country itself can be changed and adjusted, this then becomes a perfect vehicle for that.
Yeah.
Right? Deal with this thing that's going to be there through a mechanism that can change.
What's the why don't you help, because I don't know if everyone's had a chance to read the book. Give us the proposition.
Oh, what do you mean you haven't done this? I'm done. I'm closing this laptop.
As a pastor, I assume they didn't read the book that the scripture I'm preaching on. So I have to explain it, as though they were in elementary school, because I don't want them to miss the point.
Isn't that a frustration of being a pastor? No. There's only one book you have to read. You come here every Sunday, and you still haven't read the one book.
So walk us through because it's a powerful, proposition that you made around, returning to as you described in Delaware, or Vermont, what they did. For us.
I'm gonna turn a little bit. Yes, this light is really giving it.
So what the proposition? What and I don't know if you thought about the details, but what states do you propose? Have you done an analysis in terms of how many of us, need to begin to migrate to those
Sure.
locales to start to really engender and extract some influence and control from a political standpoint and ultimately economic?
So I do the basics, the basic summary. At the end of the Civil War, 3 southern states were majority Black: Louisiana, Mississippi, South Carolina. Another 3 southern states were within, I think, 4 percentage points of being majority Black. Another, I think Florida was within 6 percentage points. All southern states had enormous percentage of Black people, because up until the Great Migration, 90% of all Black people in America lived in the American South. And so I take readers through this kind of hypothetical, which assumes some giant ifs, but if Black people had not migrated, and if the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act had both still passed, it is possible that Black people could control up to 14 Senate seats, or be majority of the coalition that controls up to 14 Senate seats. They could also be the majority of the coalition that controls more electoral college votes than California and New York combined. You probably would not have had a Republican president for the last 40 years or so. And the last time I checked, there's not a single person on the Supreme Court who was appointed over 40 years ago. So the entire Supreme Court would look different, which would mean make tremendous difference in the way we interpret our laws and the Constitution. And so the whole idea is that if Black people, not meaning every Black person, not every Black person moved north during the Great Migration, but just assume that half of the Black people who were in northern and western cities moved back to the South. That would be, if they were strategically arrayed, there'd be enough people, to make Black people the majority in several of the southern states. And when you talk about targeting, what I do is I target 9 southern states, not all 15 of them. And these are states that have 25% more or more Black population already. Mississippi is approaching 40% Black population. And those states are Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware. I even go so far as to point out target cities for people who do not have a homestead in the South, who would be moving to the South, not kind of rooted, or don't feel they are necessarily rooted in the South. And those are cities that are along what I call the I-20 to I-95 corridor. Many of these, almost every one of those cities is majority Black. All but 1 or 2 have majority Black, have Black mayors. Most of these mayors are young, dynamic, very interesting Black voices. Baltimore is one of them, and they just elected this incredibly young, very interesting Black mayor. In fact, there are now 1,200 majority Black cities in America, 90% of which are in the South. The first Black mayor of a major Southern city was Maynard Jackson in, I think it was 1973, but that was because Atlanta became a majority Black city in 1970. But now, if you look across the South at major cities, now you may notice that my target list does not include Texas.
We need to talk to.
Okay, and it does not include Florida. But of those target cities, it is actually hard to find a major city that does not have a Black mayor, or has had one recently. And so the whole municipal power structure of the American South has changed.
Yeah.
in the last 50 years. What you need to move from is moving from municipal power to state power, because there are no towns and cities in the American Constitution.
Yeah.
The Constitution splits the power between the federal government and the state government. And so if you want access to real power, you have to be in the state power game.
Speak to that further, because you really spend time breaking that down, and I know most of us spend our energy trying to elect Joe Biden, or spend energy getting Joe Biden elected. Right. When we think about around the United States, the power structure really did not shift in state elections when it came to, and actually, those who probably are less apt to support or be advocates or allies of African Americans, gain more seats, and are now pushing for restrictive, greater restrictions when it comes to election, when it comes to voter rights, et cetera. So speak, because you really lay that out in the book. Sure. Around.
Well, let me say two things here. Number one, when I say Black power, I do not mean Democratic Party power or Republican Party power or party power of any sort. And
Amen.
so a lot of right. And so a lot of people immediately assume, well, Texas should be on the list because it's almost blue. Well, blueness is not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Blackness is what I'm talking about. And what I want Black people to have enough power to do is to put enough pressure on the political system that they get answers and solutions to the issues that they are worried about. One of the problems with our current situation is that you are what the sociologists call a captured constituency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there's nowhere for you to go.
Right.
You can't vote for the Republican Party, which is now actively courting the racist and actively trying to disenfranchise you. Mm-hmm. So now you're 90+% voting for the Democratic Party, but with as the sociologists point out, with a captured constituency, you're actually less likely to get your policy objectives accomplished as a constituency because the power structure knows you have nowhere to go.
Charles, I want to jump in one question, and forgive me because it's probably a professor question, and you can tell me it is, and I'll go back and be quiet again. Sure. But the question of when you say it's about Blackness, one of the things that in my research in dealing with my students, I'm finding that definition of Blackness is now across such a wide spectrum that I have Black students who are so enmeshed with this movement that I can't, it almost hurts me to say it, that Candace Owens is doing, this ideal. And then I have young students who are over here so far radicalized, and there is not a conversation. So when I talk to the Black Student Union, they've split into 2 or 3 different subsets. So when we talk about Black power, how does your vision incorporate that diversity within Blackness?
Right. So what I say to people about Black power is that it's about Black self-determination, however that turns out to work, right? I consider myself to be incredibly liberal, particularly on social issues. Mm-hmm. I know, however, that my liberalism on social issues is not completely in line with what Black people tell pollsters about their position on social issues. I recognize that, but I also recognize that neither one of our positions has the power to impact the political structure, because nowhere until this particular election could we deliver a state or elect a senator as a majority of the coalition. So the thing about this past election that was so powerful to me is that the place that I moved to at Georgia, it was the first time, at least since Reconstruction, because I just don't have the data on Reconstruction. Of course, we have exit polls in Reconstruction, but it's at least the first time in Reconstruction that Black people were the majority of a coalition that delivered a state to any political candidate. And it was the first time in the entire history of the Senate that Black people were the majority of the coalition that elected a senator, and they didn't just elect one, they elected two. What you are seeing in Georgia is not just a reaction or backlash against Democratic victory. What you are seeing in Georgia is a replay of what happened after Reconstruction, which was a backlash against Black people having controlling power.
Right. Well, you can look at that, I would say we could look at what happened with Doug Jones in Alabama. In that special election, as you saw a coalition of African-American women come together to get him into a seat that has not been held by a Democrat in a very long time.
Right.
And the question is, you watch what happened after that election, the efforts that were made to keep that coalition from coming back to reelect him.
Right. But see, even in Doug Jones' case, it wasn't as severe or it wasn't as seismic a shift as in Georgia, because even in Alabama, Black people were central to his election, the central part of the coalition, but they were not the majority of that coalition. That thing that happened in Georgia was seismic when people looked at what the makeup of that electorate was, because all of a sudden, Black people, you're not called upon to break the tie when white people basically split down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what they're doing in Pennsylvania, where Black people is somewhere close to 15% of the population, or in Michigan, where they are around that same percentage of the population. They call you in to break the tie when white people basically split down the middle. And the way you know that you are not their policy priority is look at 2016, when Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump. And a part of the reason that she lost, not the whole, don't put it on Black people's backs, but Black people did not show up in the same numbers that they showed up when they voted for Barack Obama. But if you were truly powerful and your policy objectives were important enough to the Democratic Party, you would have seen them spend the next 2 years talking about how do we appeal to these Black people in Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania to make sure that they come out in the same numbers next time. You did not. What you saw was them say, the white working class whites did not show up. We went out and Hillbilly Elegy shot to the top of the best-selling list, and they talked about economic anxiety till the cows came home. And in fact, when Joe Biden ran, he ran as the candidate, explicitly saying, I can get those working class white people back.
Right.
They organized a whole political structure around wooing the people who were fickle enough to somehow in their minds vote for Barack Obama in one election and Donald Trump in the next, rather than focusing on your fidelity as a 90+% voting bloc to say, let us show more love to these people who show love to us. That's what power looks like. Can you make them organize their political messaging and policies around your interests to woo your votes?
Yeah. Hey, Charles, I'm curious, and I don't think you spend a lot of time on this, but how do you envision leveraging existing Black institutions to accomplish this reverse migration, i.e., and as a pastor, I'm curious, the Black church, and maybe we're so institutionalized, it's hard to leverage and just plow for this younger population. I'm curious your thoughts.
Well, I am trying to stand on the shoulders of other Black journalists who were very instrumental in the last migration. The Chicago Defender was enormously instrumental, but what they did was to put the spotlight on the issue and offer moral encouragement to it. The institutions didn't have to pick up the baton and do what the institutions do. are there one of the fascinating things about reverse migration, number one, it's already happening.
Yeah.
It's been happening for the last 20, maybe 30 years or so.
Mhm.
But they're doing it without any of the structures that helped the Great Migration in the first place. I couldn't find the Black press advocating in the way that the Black press had advocated for the Great Migration. So I stepped in to do that part of it. But there were institutions. The Urban League they took on part as part of its mission, getting Black people who were moving to the North acclimated to the North. There was, I point out in the book, there was a pamphlet. They would tell you all the little things, how to act, don't spit on the sidewalk. A lot of these Black people were moving from rural to the rural South. They'd never seen a sidewalk.
Right.
Right. The idea of dressing up for work. These were farmers. They had overalls. Right. They were doing just basic things, messaging around. They tell them, don't bring your family right away. Get set up, get a job, and then when you get settled, then you bring your family. There were, the infrastructure of the newly arrived, like the first, wave before them, was setting up structures because they knew, just like runaway slaves, there will be more coming after me. So we have to make a structure that helps to kind of grease the skids for the next wave who come behind us. We don't have an urban league of reverse migration right now. Yeah. And what I keep saying to all these Southern institutions, including and in particular, I'm going to have a discussion with a lot of these Black mayors later in April. We'll just have a kind of Zoom talk. You have a unique opportunity here. These young millennials, Black millennials, are moving out of these cities, coming to your states. I can't find any messaging that welcomes, that encourages, nothing. You have industry here that would be attractive to some of those people. And during the Great Migration, a lot of Northern white men were away. The first migration, both ways are basically begin around World War I and World War II. Yeah. Young white men had gone away to fight. Industry needed bodies. They sent recruiters into the South to say, passing out plan for us, please come, please come. Where's the recruitment? 1,200 majority Black cities, uncounted number of young Black mayors. What are you doing?
Yeah. Wow. Do you need, a friend of mine refers to me, he said, you want to be the mayor of North Texas, do you need to be the mayor of the Black mayors?
No. I won't go anywhere near politics. But I just reiterate this point, like, municipal power is important, and I'm glad that Black people have moved into the space where they can be part of that. It is state power, though. You ask any of these young Black mayors, I live in Atlanta. Keisha Lance Bottoms wanted to have more controls around public activity in the age of COVID. But it was Brian Kemp, the governor, who said, no, you can't.
Yeah.
Anything a city wants to do, a state can preempt.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah.
So you're not truly free, even if you have a Black mayor.
Yeah.
And the way states dole out resources, white flight becomes a real problem for many of these majority Black cities, because the state can just redirect resources to the burbs rather than to the central city, and it looks like you made it fail.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. This is, great conversation. Sandria, do you want to give our audience a chance to ask some questions in lieu of the fact that we're right at 5 o'clock? I know we may go over a little because Charles.
Because somebody was late.
I said because we got started. We got started a little. We were a little tardy.
Well, Charles, you know, there are a number of time zones, and then there's a lot of times. You know, there's different people's time, and so you are on different people's time, and that's all right. You came right in on different people's time.
That's right. That's right.
I want to give you guys a shot to warm up, you know, get the room ready.
I was about to, you know, I'm a singing preacher. I was about to start singing for the people.
Yeah, I was scared.
Every Southern preacher is a singing preacher, just in case the choir doesn't show up and act right.
You know it. We could lift a hymn. We could lift a hymn if we had to, Charles. We can lift a hymn. I've been known. I've preached at Richie's church, so I can lift a hymn. He'll tell you. If we have to, we will lift a hymn and then ask for a collection. We will ever leave without the collection. But
part of that tradition.
But we want to have the opportunity to have folks ask questions of you.
Sure.
We know it's tight. And so if someone has a question, I think, Richie, you have the ability to unmute people who may have a question to raise their hand. Otherwise, I'll pull from the chat if that helps. So,
okay.
Sandra, you just tell us what you'd like us to do, and and I think that'll work.
Yeah, post questions in the chat.
Okay.
There should be some already.
All right, I see some. Let me sort of try to find. A lot of people are disagreeing with me on the barbecue thing, but I'll take that. I will address y'all later. But let me see here. Ms. McKnight basically points out that Dallas historically has a deeply active political Black community, as well as a long-standing educated community. But it's so segregated that the influx of new folks don't always get to know our folks or our history. One of the things, Charles, that I've seen several times is this resistance to the fact that Texas was not brought in to your book. And I think, you know, tease that out a little bit more. As you think, do you regret not including Texas?
Not at all.
Explain yourself, please.
So here's right quickly.
Right, because it's about to get funky.
The Dallas literary community is about to burn this Zoom down.
Right, I'm on your side. I got your back, but you know, the other folks might be mad.
Right. So a lot of this divide is about whether or not Texas is on the cusp of becoming blue, and I think it probably is. But Texas is nowhere ever going to be on the cusp of becoming Black, and that is the divider for me. This is really this is literally about Black power, right? And so if you pitch out 30 years from now, 6, 7 of the southeastern states, and I'm not sure if that includes Texas at this point, will be majority Hispanic. This is not because Charles Blow said something that this is happening. Yeah. Not majority minority or majority brown, majority Hispanic. They will send whatever delegation they want to Washington, and I believe they should. Hawaii will continue to be majority Asian, Southeast Pacific Islander. And just as now, they will probably send people who represent that demographic to the House and Senate, as I believe that they should. The area from Washington, Oregon, down into the Rockies will remain majority white. Everything east of those states will be some combination of majority white and majority minority. Not a single state is projected to be majority Black. So I say to Black people, you have to just decide. Charles Blow's not forcing you to do anything, but you have to decide whether or not you want to be part of the state power in the next 30 years or not. The balkanization of that power is going to happen, not because I wanted to, but because that is the way the migration and demographic patterns are developing. This will be our country. Do you want to play a part? And it is not about, people sometimes say, well, Black people, you're only 14% of the population, 13, 14% of the population. You can't expect to have real control of any region or state. No, the Constitution, the great compromise in the Constitution is that half the power is allocated based on population, but the other half is allocated based on geography.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, there are, I think, 7 states where white people are 90+% of the population. First of all, nobody ever looks at that and says, hey, that is a problem. 1 out of every 6 votes in the Senate is controlled by a state that really, where their constituency has nothing to do with this increasing diversity of the country. But I say Black people should be 51% of a state, and people freak out. Right? That's a radical idea. But when you look at those 7 states, the combined population of those 7 states is 1/4 the population of Black people in this country. The combined population of those 7 states is 3% of the population of America. That 3% of the population of the country controls 1 out of every 6 votes in the American Senate. It is not about your absolute numbers in this democracy that determines the amount of power that you have. I often tell people that there's more people in Brooklyn than in the entire state of Alaska, but Brooklyn doesn't have 2 senators. This whole discussion about whether or not you grant Washington, D.C. statehood is not about how small it is, because there are 100,000 more people in D.C. than there are in Wyoming. Yeah. It's just that 90+% of the people in D.C. are Black. Oh, no, not 90+, but because D.C. has moved away to be like not a majority Black city anymore. But 90+% of the population of Wyoming is white. The thing I quoted in the side, there was a great quote that was given to the Washington Post where somebody said after DC lost its Black majority, is that they used to call it Chocolate City, now they call it Chocolate Chip City. But it's really about how your population is geographically arrayed. Yeah. And you can have this power by changing your geography.
I think we have time for one more question. Right. And this is an important question. It's about economic sustainability. Sure. If we bring all the folks back home, do these states like Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana have the infrastructure economically to sustain a remigration of African Americans? Georgia's poised well.
Yes,
Charles, it's poised well. It's got so many corporate headquarters. Alabama has Mercedes-Benz, and it has Hyundai.
Right.
What does Mississippi have? What does Louisiana have? How can So there's got to be jobs for me to come to.
Right. And so what I answer this in a couple of ways, because a lot of people have pointed out, 7 of the poorest states are in the South. Why would you encourage people to go to the South? I'd say, look at the destination cities, meaning the cities that Black people migrated to when they migrated. Mm-hmm. The Black poverty rate in New York City is higher than the Black poverty rate in Mississippi. It's just that there is so much income inequality in New York City that Black people live in the shadow of prosperity and believe that they are gaining something from that proximity. When in fact, your economic conditions in a place like Chicago or Cleveland or Detroit or New York are worse than the economic condition of Black people in the South.
Yeah. Agree. For affordability. And I think that's such a great point, Steve. Someone been involved in business, we're always, and been in real estate, you always want to, buy when it's least valued. And so if you have areas where you can migrate and create new economies and new opportunities, I mean, you got to see it from that vantage point, and industry will follow because they're looking for ways to create new streams of revenue.
And I would say this one last thing about migration, and I'm going to just circle back to where we started, which was the migration of all these young white people to Vermont. They didn't move because they had jobs. They didn't move because they had a beautiful housing for them to move into. A lot of them slept in the fields. They developed communes just to get along. They created a society, an economy that worked for them, and they did a lot of it through exertion of political power that made the state reorient around their political objectives. What I'm saying is not move into desperation, but if you look at Forbes' list of where the Black middle class is doing best, over half that list is cities in the American South. Mm-hmm. When people say, well, where are the jobs already at? Well, I say, when you look at where there's the most concentration of Black-owned businesses, it is in the Southeast by a long shot. Not only can you find jobs there, it is one of the best regions in the country for Black people to actually start their own companies. All of that matters to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right.
Steve, thank you. Incredible book, incredible message. And I have a daughter's in college and a son is high school, and this is going to be part of their reading list.
Oh, thank you.
Required. No, I think so. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so
Everybody
much.
Give Steve round of applause.
Charles, thank you so much.
Charles, I'm sorry, Steve, Charles.
Everything that you've done, your voice has been so important. And as the Chief Diversity Officer for this university, I'm going to tell you, this will not be the last time that we see you.
Oh, thank you so much.
It has been an enjoyable conversation. And since I'm going to need somebody to have my back about this Texas Southern thing, I'm going to be inviting you.
I'm not getting into barbecue conversation. I refuse. No. That's okay. Religion. That's a religious conversation in Southern culture, and I'm not being part of it.
But thank you so much. Thank you to the Dallas Literary Festival for a fantastic conversation. Thank you to Professor Smith. Thank you to everyone who is joining us today with the fantastic author Charles Blow and North Texas's unofficial mayor, Richie Butler. And so I turn it back over to Professor Smith.
Charles Blow, thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Since you told a great story about me, I'm going to just say two things about you.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
No, these are good. Well, one thing I know he probably hated, he gave me his phone number. The next thing is when my novel came out, Charles Blow invited me to the New York Times in the cafeteria where he first had his interview and job, first day of his job, which was important to me, and gave a shout out from the New York Times building. So I still thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure.
And when I texted him and said, Charles, would you be on the Dallas Literary Festival? Because this is going to be a big thing one day. And I want to say that you were here when we started. And so he said yes to that. So thank you for that as well. So I'm going to lose your number after this.
No, you're not. The lies.
But I have the two most important people on this on here with us. So I'm going to say next time we invite you back, we paying you.
Okay.
Oh, now she committing my budget. Okay. It's breaking up. My internet connection is janky. I'm sorry.
Again, thanks everyone for joining us for the Dallas Literary Festival. It has been wonderful since the beginning, Friday night with Mitchell Jackson and Alice Marie Johnson, and closing out with the infamous Charles Blow. I had no idea.
Infamous.
To me.
It's so shady up in here. It's so shady.
Thank you all for joining us. I hope that you had as much fun as I did, and we appreciate you being here. Charles, thank you again for coming
Oh,
in.
my pleasure.
It's like, oh, we waiting on Jay-Z. But you came in and showed up and showed out. So
Thank you so much.
much. Thank you, Richie Butler and Dr. Maria Dixon-Carr. You have the top of also my chair of the English department. This is his vision, Dr. Daryl Dixon-Carr, her fake cousin. So,
Oh no, he got cut off today, but
he lost his black card, Charles. So anyway.
Somebody says he like rub on his barbecue.
right. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you back this time next year. Have a great week.
Thank you. Blessings to
All right.
everyone.
Take care.
Bye-bye.